Hi, my name is George Dagnino, and I'm the editor of the Peter Dac Portfolio since 1977, a long time. This is the third part of this six parts presentation on protecting your portfolio from devastating events. This is the last section dealing with what are the assumptions that you have to make, or at least I make, when I protect my portfolio and those of my clients from devastating events. I keep repeating to myself that I have to think different if I want to protect my portfolio from devastating events. You cannot believe what everybody's saying. You have to think different. And this is the detail of how really I manage my money. Again, I would like to remind you that my objective is not to maximizing returns, but is managing risk. And the way I concluded to manage risk is to reduce the portfolio volatility, because the less volatile is your portfolio, the easier it becomes to correct if you make mistakes. In this part of the presentation, I want to talk about the failure in believing in the lesson of history. Everybody's saying, well, history says this, history says that. This is a great idea. However, I would like to show you that that is not the way it works. For many years, I read all sorts of history: the history of philosophy, the history of history, the history of finance, money, monetary policy, everything you can think of. But let me think about history of philosophy. After reading for 3-4 years with a friend of mine, all the major philosophies since Plato, what I really come up with, that yes, the philosophers have great ideas, but can we use it in today's times? And the answer is no. Why? Because philosophers always deal with the world they know, and they always talk about the world they know and how things could be working better within that constraint. So is a very limited view of their thought, because again, it reflects the current times that they live in. Of course, there is the history of history. But then again, if you look at the way the historian write the history, is from their viewpoint, very limited viewpoint, their beliefs of how the world works. Again, if you look at how many books have been written on the collapse of the Roman Empire, and every historian has his own view, either because they are the barbarians, or because there is concentration of power, or because it moved from republic to imperial kind of management. Everybody has his own either financial issues. Everybody has his own view. So what history are you going to believe, and what history are you going to use to apply to current times? I think it's strictly a crazy idea. It's interesting to know what happened in the past, but is it useful to what is happening right now? I don't think so. If they say, well, history rhymes, yes, I know, but that rhymes on hindsight. But if you say now what's going to happen next, who knows? What does history teaches you? Basically nothing. Of course, I read The History of Money and studied with a great book by Milton Friedman. And the idea was that money is an important leading indicator. But if you look at what happened to what the central banks have done since 2007, 8, 9, they have destroyed the meaning of money supply, because they are totally controlling interest rates. They're totally all across the yield curve. And the meaning of money as an economic indicator is totally failing. So again, it's another point where history doesn't really is useful, but it tells you what has happened, but not what will happen, because current conditions are so different from the past. That is the main issue. But there is one history that I really found that has some information, and I learned a few things, and is the history of the price of raw materials, and is one of the few historical lessons that really matters, because commodities give you the ultimate economic signal. If you see the commodities decline, there is no question the economy is weak. If you see commodities strong, there is no question the economy is strengthening. So commodities really have a role in the management of your money. Okay, so what is the point of part 3? Well, people want to use history as a guide, but history seems to rhyme on hindsight, though. After try to force what happens now to what has happened in the past, but economic conditions now are totally different from any economic conditions in the future, because of technological innovation, because of banking innovation, because of central banking roles, because of concentration of power, because of wealth, because of everything, globalization, everything. So nobody knows the future, because it is driven by the quest of power. As the quest for power changes, so changes the conditions, economic conditions, and therefore, who knows what's going to happen next? Can you figure it out? I cannot. So growth slows down only, and this is another, if there is a lesson, with a lot of humility I have to say, that I learned, the growth slows down when power becomes concentrated. I saw this directly when I was living in Europe, and that when there is for instance, in Italy, in Spain, in France, those countries are slowing down because there is a high concentration of power. The fact that we cannot grow in the United States, maybe is because power has been so concentrated that there is no that kind of animal spirit anymore to be able to grow and produce. But the important lessons of what I just talked about in the first 3 presentations is just that you cannot believe anyone, because there is no reason to believe. The records are there for everybody to accept. I know I told you have to think different if you want to protect your money. You have to think different. But then there is another issue. If you cannot believe anyone, why should you trust what you believe? You can be subject to the same mistakes that everybody makes. So, I don't care about what they say. This is what I think. But why are you right? What are your odds of being right? It makes you comfortable to think that, but from a very practical viewpoint, you cannot trust yourself and what you believe based on the information that you have, which is biased anyway. So anything can happen without notice, and you don't know when and what, because that's the history of history. Now, having said all this, in the next 3 presentations, I'm going to show you my practical way, very pragmatic, on how I manage my money, considering all the uncertainties created in our mind from the past 3 presentations that I had, part 1, part 2, and part 3. Well, thank you again for following this presentation. And again, if you want to know how I answer the question that I don't know what I don't know, and yet I'm forced to manage my money, trying to avoid a big loss in capital against things that I don't know when and if are going to happen, please do continue in part 4, part 5, and part 6. Thank you again. See you soon.